During certain periods of my life, I have a very difficult time focusing on pretty much anything important or difficult.
Alright, this guy's talking really slow.
During these periods, it seems almost impossible to break out of the social media limbo, where you're just constantly switching between tabs, refreshing pages, kind of waiting for...
See, this is not something that like exists, right? The social media limbo. This is like something that was just made up. It's just like a social construct, as they say, right? Which is also just like a made up term. Everything in like life are like ideas. So the idea of spending your time doing that, like going to different tabs or going to like Facebook, scrolling through that, is just like a new idea. This is not like something ingrained in our like mind or anything, which contradicts a lot of things he's gonna say later, right? So they pick and choose which things are like innate knowledge and which things are like pre-existing conditions. Like, oh, we have learned to like this stuff, or like there's never any of that going on, right? It's always just like we either have it ingrained in our nature because we're hunter gatherers or whatever bullshit they say, or they just pick and choose when it's not like that doesn't apply, right? You'll see it
to happen, like for someone to post a cool photo on Instagram or something.
I'll point it out.
To be entertained, but if you actually have to apply yourself, it's extremely difficult, borderline painful to do so. And I'm pretty sure almost every...
See, if it's painful for you to like actually do what you need to do, maybe it's because what you're doing is like worthless to yourself, right? If what you're doing is actually valuable, you wouldn't have an issue with like suffering or making it feel painful to get better at it, right? And a good example of this is like, let's say you're like trying to get good at a game, and you suck at aiming, right? So you're like not getting really good in the competitive scene. So people think like, oh well, training for it is hard, but it isn't, right? Like if they actually tried, they would find out that like aim training and all that stuff is actually pretty interesting and fun, and the results are almost instant, right? It's something that you value, you genuinely value. But like if you're trying to get more productive at like your like schoolwork or something, like you don't, that doesn't happen. That doesn't work, right? Because you don't actually care about that. You just care about the diploma, and most of the time you're just there because you were told to. Like it was a good idea to go to college because most people who go to college were people who were told that you should continue going to high school and that you should listen to this stuff and this is how your plan in life should be. Everything's preordained for these people.
Everyone can relate to this problem. I'm sure you've seen a lot of videos on YouTube giving you little tips and tricks as to how to focus better, including my own channel, but there are very few videos kind of diving in, talking about why it's so difficult to focus on hard things. Like what's the deal? Why can't we just sit down and do something important with very little strain? Why aren't we motivated to do the things that...
See, the key is like important, right? He keeps saying the things that are important to us. So the difference between what I said about the gaming thing and getting better at like, I don't know, like a job or something, is that you actually care about the game. And there are people who are just happy enough to play games casually, which is not good. I don't agree with that. I feel like if you should spend anything in your time, even recreationally, it should be done to like improve some sort of thing, right? Games in general are like small microcosms of life, right? They're like you're solving problems. People like solving problems. And sometimes people like solving easier problems, which is not something that improves you solving better problems, right? But some people are convinced because they've done it so many times, right? It's not an ingrained thing in their mind. It's just like basic philosophy.
Would significantly advance us further in our lives, because it's not like we don't want those things. It's just hard. So in this video, I want to dive into why we procrastinate, why it's so hard to do important things. Because knowing how this all works helps us carve out a long-term solution. It can help us permanently solve this problem. And that may sound really ambitious, but I do believe...
He says permanently solve problem, but he's never going to actually give it a solution. These kind of videos, these kind of like how to not procrastinate, they never actually give any solutions.
It is possible, but first we kind of have to discover a little bit more about our human brain. So weird thing about our human brain, I'm really trying to convince you that I'm human. The weird thing about the brain is that it pretty much hasn't changed for thousands of years. We share, for the most part, the exact same brain.
So it's unpredictable. Like it's so predictable, actually, my bad. It's always just the preordained, like we have this nature. We don't have any new ideas. We're just like, we're born exactly the same.
As our hunter-gatherer ancestors. And this is the type of brain that was evolved to scan vast valleys.
It's just like such anti-human psychology.
Is for the prospect of food or a fresh kill, and absolutely light up and get excited at the sight of an antelope, so you can gather your friends together and run after it, kill it. This is the kind of brain that, as you're kind of going through a berry bush and you find a juicy berry, you're super excited, you eat the berry, and it pretty much makes your day. It's not really exciting stuff. There wasn't a lot of stuff to do back then, but that's just kind of the way it was. And the reason why we were motivated to go run after an antelope or eat a fresh berry is the same reason. Wow.
You don't know that.
It's the same reason we're motivated to go on Facebook and, check our notifications, go on Instagram.
That's such like a fucking crazy like mental gymnastic to equate some guy that you literally never met, right, going to kill an antelope because he finds it enjoyable, to like scrolling through like Facebook or like Instagram, right? These are completely different ideas and completely different like knowledge that led to both decisions. right? So both the person getting the antelope or learning how to kill it was a completely different circumstance. And by that, I'm not saying that knowledge is relative. I'm saying that it's actually more contextual, right? So by believing that you have choice and that you have the will to like make those choices, I can go hunt this antelope and I know why I'm doing it, and I can go on Facebook and I know why I'm doing it. I know how I'm wasting my time. I know that I have no other option. This is all I know with the antelope thing. To like, I have other things I could be doing, but I'm gonna do this with my time. Like, this is completely different circumstances.
The reason why we're motivated to do any of this stuff is because of a brain chemical called dopamine. Now, you've probably seen a lot of videos on YouTube if you're into self-improvement about dopamine, but dopamine is kind of misunderstood because most people think it's the feel-good chemical. It's a brain chemical that's released when you're experiencing pleasure. It's the reason why you experience pleasure, but that's not exactly true because dopamine is the motivating brain chemical. Dopamine is what's released when you feel like you're about to be rewarded, or when you feel
He didn't even read the top part.
like you're about to experience something pleasurable. When your ancient ancestors saw the antelope frolic across the field, they got a squirt of dopamine, which motivated them to go kill it. When you see a notification pop,
It doesn't work that way. Okay, so everything that you do is not based on the motivation to complete it. Sometimes, like, you lie to your parents because you're gonna get hit, right? You're gonna get like yelled at because so you lie to them, right? So that's not motivated by like dopamine, right? You could say that that's motivated by fear, but that's why I don't like the word motivate, because it's almost directly tied with risk, with reward, right? And a lot of times we don't know what things are rewarding. We don't know that getting that promotion of this job that we hate is rewarding, right? Maybe it's because if you don't do it, your wife that you thought you were lucky enough to get anyway might leave you if you don't, right? Like stuff like that. Like, not everything's motivated by having self-esteem or like saying that when I do this, I will be like accomplished. I will accomplish something. You actually have to know why you're doing it and why you want it, right? There's more things to just completing a goal. You could just be like, I need to complete this. Like, I don't know, if we're in a fucking like Saw movie, right? And like, if I don't solve this puzzle before the time runs out, my head's gonna blow off, right? Like, you wouldn't say that that's motivated by dopamine.
Facebook, you get a squirt of dopamine, which motivates you to click it. And what this means is
Like, dopamine is just like a hormonal like response, right? So physiological responses like this are not tied to ideas. They may come as a consequence. For example, like if I do something and then I feel good after it, it's not necessarily like the purpose, right? Like, if your emotions are there as a barometer of your success, as a successful state of life or an unsuccessful state, if your house like burned down and you lost everything, it would be weird if you didn't feel sad, right? Like, it's there for a reason. It's telling you like, hey, something's wrong. What do we do? And then you make the choice.
that dopamine, which motivated them to go kill it. When you see a notification pop up on Facebook, you get a squirt of dopamine, which motivates you to click it. And what this means is that dopamine is what controls your motivation.
Thank you.
It doesn't control your motive. Like I said again, it's your ideas, right? If you have bad ideas, you're gonna make bad decisions, right? Decisions are based on judgment, and judgment is based on intelligence.
Wait, did you get a Big McChicken?
Yeah, it's a McChicken. Now, why is this important? Despite the fact that we share the exact same brains as our hunter-gatherer ancestors, we don't live in that world anymore. We live in a world of supernormal stimuli. Through ferocious technological advancement and capitalistic ventures, or whatever you want to call it.
It's just so... I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What are you talking about?
We live in that world anymore.
I gotta listen to it
again.
again.
Supernormal stimuli. Through ferocious technological
Supernormal stimuli.
advancement
I don't know what that means.
and capitalistic ventures, or whatever you want to call it. We live in a world where things are designed to be as
See, it's just anti-capitalist bullshit.
pleasurable as humanly possible. And what supernormal stimuli does is it hijacks our natural reward pathways. It tricks our brain into thinking we are about to do something so important for our survival that we have an almost irresistible urge towards doing that thing. A good example of this is junk food. Food is integral for our survival, and high-calorie foods are usually even more important for our survival because, you know, they'll keep us alive longer.
This is such bullshit. You can easily like overwhelm yourself with like stuff like that, but it's so easy to like win against it. Like, if you were just consciously aware of the facts of like what this food that I'm eating will do to me, like, your mind can actually stop generating the dopamine if you really want to look at it that way, right? If you consciously think to yourself, how much time am I wasting doing this, or how unhealthy am I getting, right, while you're eating junk food, and you think of it compared to like, what should I be doing? And to do that, you have to have a plan in the first place. So that's like a whole other thing, right? To have a plan, you need to have like goals, and you need to have like prior experiences of completing projects. So let's say you are that. Let's say you know how to do that. You know what to value, and then you have an issue of like procrastinating and looking up memes on Instagram or something, right? Eventually, if you just think to yourself like, what am I doing? How become more aware of your metaphysics, right? Like, of like, what am I doing? How am I thinking about thinking of this? And you'll find that if your intentions are to not do it or to improve, or you have a specific goals, your mind will actually be like, wait, we don't actually have to release dopamine here because we have deemed it useless, right? You can deem things useless just like how I can just say something is useless. I'm not saying like mind over matter kind of thing, but I'm saying that you can like put your mind into the state of this is useless. As long as I keep thinking of it, I have to rewire my mind. And not by rewire, I don't mean the way he's gonna say this later in the video, but I'm saying that if all knowledge can be automated, right? Like even just you walking, you can automate the bad ideas to become useless. Like all everything you do in life, right? Like all your skills, everything you do, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse, right? So people don't have this habit of eliminating the unnecessary, the irrelevant, right? It becomes too impersonal, too cold. That's what the people like say it, right? It makes it seem like you are cold when you're taking away so much pointless things. Like for example, you can have friends who are toxic and are ruining your life, but many people don't have like the balls, right, to just like say, fuck this, I'm not doing this anymore, because it is difficult. You have to actually like have like know why you're doing it, be very confident in your decision, and then follow through with it. To say like, wow, what I was doing was actually useless. You have to have like a kind of a goal. Everything you do like should have a goal.
The more calories, the longer we'll live, roughly speaking. See, what junk food does is it's mechanically engineered to be as high fat, high calorie as.
And that's just ridiculous. The more calories, the more you live. Like that has nothing to do with what we know about like like diet science, which is like also like nutrition science, right? Which is also really kind of like bullshit. A lot of it. It's really hard to find good evidence on it, on any kind. But you could also make the thing like, oh, well, we're supposed to die in our 30s because many of us didn't back then. To make the argument of, well, maybe we should eat whatever we like, or we should eat whatever makes us like, I don't know. It's just like ridiculous. Doesn't make any sense.
So when we get that beautiful, when we eat that beautiful potato chip, our brain remembers that. And the next time we see a bag of potato chips at the grocery store, there's a huge amount of dopamine that's released, motivating you to go grab that reward that's integral for your survival. So we almost become slaves to our dopamine system. We almost just go where our dopamine system tells us to go. That's why we get.
You only do that if you are like a slave to your bad ideas, right? If you realize that this is, what am I doing? This is bad. I need to stop doing this. Be aware of it. Put more like awareness to the bad ideas. You will stop doing them. If you have no ideas, if you have no values, if you're like your life is worthless, right, because you don't know what the hell you want, then of course you're gonna keep doing these bad ideas.
Into kind of social media binge, because our brain is telling us to stay on these social media sites because there's a chance that we might get a reward. We might get social validation, or we might be able to look at something kind of stimulating and naughty. It's the dopamine system that's telling us and motivating us to stay there. So what does this all mean if we're bringing this all together? Basically, for most of us who have difficulty focusing,
It's so bad to put a joke like naughty. Just say it like you're porn, right? Just say it like you're trying to make a serious video here.
Find it really, really difficult to be motivated to do harder things. That is only because we have reprogrammed our brain to fall for this supernormal stimuli rather than normal stimuli, natural stimuli. Because it's not that these natural rewards aren't rewarding. They're just less rewarding than the artificial supernormal rewards. So the long-term solution to be able to focus on boring things is to reprogram our brain to remember that these things are actually pleasurable and really good for us and integral.
Okay, so he's kind of getting a point, right? So we need to reprogram our brain. How are we going to do it?
For our survival. And this isn't just about a dopamine fast for a couple of days or something like that. We almost need to reset our baseline long term. We need to think about how much stimulation we want in our lives. What kind of
What does that mean? To what standard?
supernormal stimulus do we want to take part in? You know, I've noticed in my own life that when I'm camping for a long period of time and there isn't much to do other than figure out how to cook a fish over a fire or set up my tent or go for a walk in the woods or go swimming or lay on the sand. In these situations, little things like having a conversation with a sibling or a friend becomes immensely pleasurable. It's the same reason why people who break out of an addiction cycle, they stop doing their immensely pleasurable
All right, he doesn't answer the question.
thing cold turkey. After a certain amount of time, they find an increased enjoyment out of life itself. Pretty much everything in life becomes more enjoyable. They start to find motivation to do things other than their addiction. You know, it's something that I also noticed during the quarantine.
Also, spoiler, he actually doesn't answer it for the rest of the video.
Why it was so hard for me to find my work ethic again is because all that time inside made me an internet addict. I spent so much time looking at screens that
It's so ridiculous. An internet addict? So was the guy hunting the antelope a hunting addict?
my baseline of dopamine and stimulation was so
These
high.
are just like separate ideas, right? If the guy had to hunt that animal, if he didn't, he died, right? You could do whatever the hell you want. Like, you want to play The Sims here? The Sims 2? Actually, this is Sims 3. And just, like, do it. Like, whatever you want. Like, you have goals. You have initiative to do anything you want. Like, this isn't stopping you. This isn't killing your life. These people have just, like, nothing going on. Or maybe they just don't have any value. So that when they do things that they perceive as, like, wait, I'm supposed to be valuable, right? They don't get anything out of it.
Things became almost painful to do in comparison. The disparity of stimulation became so vast that I felt physical pain trying to do harder things. So if we're able to find a way,
If you felt physical pain for doing harder things, then I think you need to start with something smaller, right? You should never overreach and do things like out of this world insane. This is what the big like flaw in people trying to improve or doing self-help, right? Is that a lot of the self-help is very really bad philosophy, first of all, and at best bad advice. So you can get past that, and then you get to like the the practical like advice of what to do, and like, oh well, practice this X amount of time because this guy who's very successful did this, but they skip that like you have to start like with stuff that are like smaller in scale, right? Like you have to have some sort of skill transfer, either like a lot of skills transfer to skip multiple steps. You usually should start smaller, and lots of people don't remember when they were younger that when they did something that could maybe make them better at some other thing, so that they can go through practice faster, and then this gets chalked up as like a fluke or luck or talent, which is no such thing, right? Like for example, if I was really good at if I played like games a lot when I was like 3 years old, and I played a lot of video games, so I developed hand-eye coordination, and my reflexes were improved. And later in life, one of my cousins says, "Hey, you want to play like this game?" And I get on it, and I'm really good at it. It doesn't mean I have talent, right? Like I had prior skill that I transferred to this new game because it has similar mechanics. You can do stuff like that when it comes to harder skills that you have experience in, but like you need to like realize that you have a limited time in life to do certain skills. You can't just do literally everything, right? But there's also all knowledge is related, right? So you could apply specific things of economics to gaming or like card game or like decision making, like RPG stuff where you have to balance like resources, right? So like learning about economics could probably like have a skill transfer there to make these things easier, right? But a lot of these people who this video would appeal to kind of just want like, how do I just switch my brain? How do I just immediately make things easy, right?
To genuinely enjoy.
Like these people are suffering because they're trying to take the easy like route, and then they watch the video like this, and then they wonder why they haven't done anything.
The things that make our lives better, then what are we doing? Like, why don't we just go and do that? I really want to challenge you guys over the
You see, even he said it as a joke.
next couple of weeks or months to really think about how much stimulation you want to invite into your life. What's actually adding value to your life, and can you reduce the amount of supernormal stimuli that you're indulging in on a daily basis? You may actually find that by reducing your amount of time on social media or on YouTube or eating junk food or you name it, you may actually come to genuinely look forward to socializing. You might actually look forward to reading a book. You might actually be motivated to go to the gym. There will be that dopamine driver pointing you in that direction, creating an irresistible urge to go to the gym. Like, who would have thought that's possible? And it is possible because it's science. One way that I'm going to make sure I stick to this over the next month at least is I made a list of a large amount of things that are fairly low stimulus.
See, he says like, hey, you could do this, and then he just doesn't say how.
Instead of doing a more stimulating alternative. That includes things like going for a walk, reading a book, talking with a friend, Skyping a friend, going to the gym. By having that list in your hand, you'll have an automatic response to that urge to go do the thing like, eat a bag of chips or something. So I'll make a follow-up video on my second channel on how that all went. I really encourage you guys to do the same thing. And if you're looking for more activities that don't overstimulate you, then I'd highly recommend checking out videos on Skillshare and use it as an alternative to watching videos on YouTube. Because YouTube is like candy. If you eat too
Well, that's basically it. He doesn't actually say anything, and this is a very low-hanging fruit. Maybe I shouldn't have made this video because this guy is just fucking retarded. And he spends the next 2 minutes trying to kill time to make his ad. The YouTube thing.
much of it and apply it directly to my real life. Explore your creativity and have a great
I found this funny, right? So he says he's talking about Skillshare, and then he says like one of the programs I am interested in is like this filmography or cinematography course. My bad. And it just tells you about like what he really like values if he's choosing to like prioritize the look of his videos rather than the content of the video.